welcome to the ProSynth Network live show, episode 184. We're getting close to that 200. Welcome, everyone, and good to see you. Well, kind of see you. I can't obviously see you. That would be cool, though. Did you always used to do that when you were a kid? You wondered if they could see you on the other side of the screen. That was always fun. But anyway, we can't see you because, we're not that sinister yet. But welcome to the show. And it's been a couple of weeks because obviously I was away last week. So thanks to all the guys for holding the fort. And, of course, to Dr. Mike Metley for standing in so appropriately. So he'll be back, I'm sure, because I've got a few more Fridays off between now and the end of the year. But more on that later. So, yeah, we're back with another week of music technology discussion, and we've got some very special guests again, and Kent hasn't turned up yet, so who knows, he'll just drop by at some point. And Ben is not here because Ben is gigging, so there you go. That's before you ask any questions. We haven't killed him, he's working. So there you go. What can you do? Welcome to everyone in the chat. Hello. And I won't go through you all by name, but thank you ever so much for joining. And if this is your first time, welcome. And where have you been? Make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell to get notifications. Sorry, I'm having trouble with my headphones today. There's a slightly loose connection in one of the cables, so I'm just trying to wiggle it just a little bit, as they said in that
wiggle
song.
it.
And now it's all gone buzzy, and there we go. Anyway, I'll make do with that until I can hand over to somebody else. Right, okay. Let's see. Let's get all the regular, boring stuff out of the way. If you wouldn't mind, could you like, comment, subscribe? That's a Sean Connery version. Subscribe and share. That would be fantastic. If you haven't already, give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Whichever you feel is most appropriate. And if you want to help us stay on the air, you can do so either through our PayPal donation link, which you can see just there. It's also a link in the description below, or you can use things like Super Chat and Super Stickers. That would be wonderful. You don't have to. It's not obligatory. This show is completely free to air, but your donations help us keep doing this. And judging by the donations that come in, we're going to be here for a long while, so it's all your fault. We are across all of the social media channels, as you might expect. We're on that thing that used to be called Twitter. We're on Instagram. Of course, we have the main group over on Facebook. And here, I think, where most people are, on YouTube as well. So make sure you give us a like or a follow in all the appropriate places. If you have a question for us, whether it's to myself, Andrew, Kent, or our guests, then stick a big capital Q in front of it, and that way we can more easily see it, shall I say, and pop it into the queue. See the queue. And I'm doing funnies as well. And we'll be able to ask those. That I think that deserves one of. I think we'll go for this one, because it was a bit awful. You can, if you want to email us. Not many people do email us, but if you want to, there it is, info@prosynthnetwork.com. And I believe that is all of the shenanigans out of the way.
We seem to be getting an echo.
Oh, do you? That's weird. From me? Oh.
No. It's gone now.
That's odd. Okay. I can't hear anything at the moment because nothing is coming through on my headphones. And I don't know why that is. And this could prove to be a slight problem. It's like, I think. Oh, well, that's one channel I've got. That'll do for now. Moving swiftly on. Let's get this show actually on the road proper. So lots of news to talk about. Oh, we've had some donations. Matt Evans, thank you very much indeed. He seconds Andrew Brooks' donation, which must have happened right about there. Thank you, gentlemen, for your £5. It's most appreciated. Can I just also say, while I'm here, thank you to Andrew Brooks and to Ben from Musines. And I haven't seen Andy in there yet, but I'm sure Andy Synth Addict is probably around or will be there later. There are 3 moderators in the YouTube chat. So behave, otherwise they'll be after you. Not that they ever do, but the one thing they really do that's very appreciated is that they put all the links up to things that we talk about in the chat. So if you want to open a new window and look at that while we're chatting about it, they'll put all the links up. So they do a great service in that regard. Thank you ever so much, everybody there. Let's get that off the screen and let's go to currently my only other co-presenter, Mr. Andrew Longhurst. Oh, I just removed him from the stage. There he is. Let's put him on. We've seen everybody there now. It's no secret now.
This is going terribly well.
It's the headphones.
It's
the
going
headphones
terribly well.
Yeah. I'm only hearing you out of one. Oh, hang on. I've got.
If I speak that way,
Don't move. Don't move anymore. That's it. Yeah. So just stay like that and talk.
Hello, how are you?
There you go. That'll do.
There we go.
Yeah, it's working.
How are you all? Thank you all for joining. It's lovely to see so many in the chat already. No one would know. We haven't got any other guests at all, have we, Robbie? Because no one.
No, you wouldn't have seen any of those.
No. We just have to keep our fingers crossed and hope someone jumps in at some point.
Yeah. Have you had a busy week?
I have. I've had a very busy week. More of getting the mill ready to be bought and setting up CICs and things to provide lovely people with mentoring services in the creative arts. That's all been going well, but I've been snowed under, and I finally today got an offer of help from a bunch of people, and it was like a huge weight was lifted to suddenly, when you're doing these things, it's always nice when suddenly someone says, look, do you need a hand? And you go, well, yeah. Yeah. And they jump in and you just go, oh, thank God. So, yeah, it's been a good week, and I've had fun playing with a sort of, I don't know, some sort of electronic musical instrument of some sort. I don't know.
I'm sure we'll
discover
what that is shortly. Absolutely.
It looked very similar to one I used to own, but
there you go.
Who knows?
Indeed. Well, welcome, and thanks for joining, as always. Kent still isn't here, so I'm hoping he's alive, and maybe he's just still eating his dinner. I don't know.
One can hope.
He will be along shortly, I'm sure. But in the meantime, I think we just might as well bring our guests in. That you've seen these guys before plenty of times. They are regulars on the show, and we love having them on every time, because every time they come on, they bring with them good tidings and wonderful synthesizers and related things. And we've actually got two to cover, because last time they put an instrument out, they were busy. We were busy. We just couldn't coordinate. So we thought, well, we'll put them up and do a double header. Let's welcome Dan Goldstein and Mitchell Sigman, both of Cherry Audio. Give them a big round of applause, everyone.
Hey.
Welcome back, gentlemen. Always good to see you. How are we both?
Good. It's Friday the 13th. Is that a thing over there?
It is. It is.
And this is what's been going on with my headphones. I've just realised it's Friday.
It's Friday. Yes.
There you go. And it might just be why Kent's not here, which is a little scary.
She's doing the horror thing. Yeah.
Horror.
I do know that he was supposed to be shifting the GS1 today, so I'm hoping that he's not underneath it still, because that thing is a beast.
All those operators are so heavy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Hey, we're back. Look, we're back. Hi, everybody.
So, you guys have been very busy.
Yes.
2 synthesizers since last we spoke. Harmonia, and of course the brand new one, which launched just the other day, the wonderful PS3300. And I think that also deserves a big round of applause. What a magnificent achievement that was.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a huge effort
on
our part. We have been we have been busy. That is accurate.
Yeah. Well, I think
should we talk about the harmonium first? Because
should we do Harmonia first? Because we do it in time order.
Wasn't that Mitchell's idea?
Oh yeah,
isn't he to blame?
He is.
Yeah.
So let's just show everyone what Harmonia is, and we can do that by clicking on this button right here, and bring it into the stage. There it is in all its glory. He says, "There it is. There, Harmonia." This is the next in your continually expanding line of original instruments that are not based on anything that's been created before, per se. So I guess, Mitchell, tell us, what is Harmonia? What does it do? How does it do it? And why did you make it?
Okay, so the original idea for it was there was a voltage modular module that we did called the additive oscillator, and it was sort of based on an existing real hardware thing out there, and it was pretty simple. It was just synthesizer waveforms, sine waves, and saw, and the standard stuff. And there were 8 faders on it, and you could dial each one up and go through the harmonics. Like it would have harmonic multiples. You'd have the root, say it was 100 hertz, then 200 hertz, then 3 and 4, and so forth. It was the harmonic series. And you could also modulate that and move through those harmonics, which sounds pretty nifty even with just sine waves. It's a pretty cool sound, and you can mix them in a lot of ways, and the way that sort of onboard modulation and mixing works is really, really flexible. So it was always in the back of my head that it would be really cool if we had an entire polyphonic standalone instrument that did that kind of thing. And it sort of just went from there. I guess the side road of that is also that my first big fancy synthesizer was a Korg Wave Station back when they were big. Right. And I always loved the Vector thing, and I have a Yamaha TG33, and I've always had those, and I've always loved Vector synths, and I've always loved, I've never had a Prophet VS, but I love those, and anything that does that kind of evolving thing. And so this was a kind of cool way to get that. And just from playing around with our additive oscillator and voltage, it was always in my head, well, what if instead of just having basic synthesizer waveforms, it was samples? And we did creepy, weird samples. So, because again, I mean, the idea is you want something unique and textural and weird. So James Terrace, our head sound designer, and I sort of put our heads together, and we came up with all these things to sample. And we spent a lot of time working on that, sampling our modular synths and weird old records and anything weird we could think of. Right. And that was sort of what it was. I guess the funny part is, when Dan and I talked about it, Dan was like, well, I don't know if it'll work. We didn't know how good it would work with the samples, or if this would be a good idea, or if having all the harmonics, the samples would be interesting. So I mocked up a really crude version of it in voltage modular with a bunch of sampler modules all tuned different ways, and one custom weird mixer module so we could mix through the harmonics. Mm-hmm. And it sounded really cool, and this was a very crude version. So I guess to answer the question, really, what it is it's really pretty simple, actually. You've got a sample that plays. And if you look across where it says center on one of the oscillators, you can move that across and pop up the different harmonics. You can also grab the orange bars. Well, hopefully he does that. You can grab the orange bars. Perfect. Thank you. And you can adjust the levels of the different harmonics. So it's really simple in concept, but because you can sweep through them either gradually or abruptly, and you can also set the tuning of each one of those harmonics individually, which is another feature we added, either in mathematical harmonic series multiples, or if you hit that semitone, if you press that button on the left, it'll go to semitone mode, and you can tune them in semitones. So there are just a lot of different ways that you can move through these different harmonics, and because they are samples and they're mostly stereo and they're often creepy sounding or just interesting harmonically, you can get a whole lot of sound out of it. And it's got a standard high pass, low pass filter that does all sorts of standard filter stuff, but I barely use the filter because you can get so much sound out of an oscillator on this thing. Yeah. And it's got a ton of ways to modulate everything. So that's kind of the thumbnail, I guess.
Yeah. What I really liked about it was that the concept sounds kind of complicated, but the way that it's been laid out is very obvious and it's very simple. The vertical and the horizontal, the harmonical, the semitones. It seemed very obvious as to how you can do this, and it was very quick. It didn't take long at all to sort of deviate from a preset and come up with something really kind of unique and wonderful on your own.
Thank you. Yeah, it really is neat because if you have a preset where it's doing some crazy modulation, you can just change the waveform and have a whole new sound, or you can change the tuning of the harmonics. and have a whole new sound.
Yeah.
And, definitely what I had in mind was traditionally with synths that do a lot of this crazy evolving kind of stuff, there's certainly plenty of things out there that do that. But some of them that I won't name are terrifying to use. And, guys like me and Dan and you guys are, seasoned synthesizer nerds. And I'll open up one of these things and go like, I don't know what to do with this thing. And you sort of get frustrated and you're like, I don't want to deal with 10,000 controls that I don't know what they do. And it doesn't make any sense. So the idea with this was make this crazy sounding thing, but try to make it in as few controls that are as obvious as possible that anybody can just get in and really quickly find gratifying noises.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just sounds. As you can, again, this kind of wonderful blend of being able to see what you're hearing as well. So as you see those rise, you can hear the difference, all the different harmonics coming in. I mean, it's just brilliant. I love it. It's one of my favorite Cherry Audio synths of the original.
I like it too.
The original series, because it has that kind of very digital feel, but not overtly so, and it's incredibly easy to use. And after my experiences recently with a certain clavier, there's something like this. It's just like, wow, I can get some amazing sounds really easy. I can just grab things and go. And of course, if you've got a little controller with stuff on, you can just click on something there, MIDI learn. I'll just assign that to my fader, and now I'm just fading, and it's just so instant. And you can do that, so you can have both of them go. And look at that, you can just so simple to just quickly assign stuff to a controller. And, and you're in, and it's
another
fun.
Happy accident was that because these are stereo samples and they're relatively long for this kind of thing, when you have multiple harmonics going of the same sample, they're moving at different speeds. So naturally, if there's any sort of out-of-tuneness or funkiness in them, which there is, they all kind of chorus against each other because they're all moving at different speeds. So you get, in addition to the inherent stereo sample, you get a bunch of copies of this moving at different speeds that all just sort of, do one of those, which is real neat.
It's a lot of fun. And I say I've loved playing with this, although it's a slight giveaway that I haven't updated it just recently because the update's still there.
I think that's just a fix. I don't think that actually makes it do anything wonderful.
I'm not going to even do that live on the show because I know it's Friday the 13th.
I was going to ask you, Mitchell, the interpolation between the samples is actually really good.
That's Dan, actually.
Is that Dan?
Yeah.
Dan, what were you doing with that? Because it's extraordinarily clean.
Yeah, there's some very cool technology that we've kind of created for Dreamsynth, and that's evolved into our sample playback products that basically allow us to take a sample and pitch it really high and really low without having aliasing. It's just some, we've just developed this because we haven't built a lot of sample-based projects. Every time we do one, we have this goal of, really having it sound great. And so we've really just kind of refined this technology. So you can pitch the samples all over the place. You're not going to hear the kinds of aliasing artifacts that you hear with, early and kind of simple sample playback stuff. And then, just the, this kind of algorithm we came up with to blend from one pitch to another and have it happen really smoothly. There's a lot going on. I mean, if you think about it, every note that you press can be 8 stereo samples playing back per oscillator, and there are 2 oscillators. So you can have as many as 16 stereo separately pitched samples all playing back and blending together. And to do that in a way that is, sonically very clean and, and relatively low CPU was, that's a challenge.
I think what's really fascinating is that it doesn't feel like a sample-based player. It doesn't feel like that at all. I know you're using samples, but it doesn't. You don't get any sense of them being samples.
Well, there's one other
just don't.
little thing that I should probably talk about that's sort of the fun story part. And Dan kind of, I think, thought I was out of my mind. We looped the samples using this thing called Infinity, which...
Oh, my word, you're using that.
I knew like the old timers would be like, oh, yeah, Infinity. Yeah. So I remembered back when I had more hair, there was this app called Infinity made by Antares, makers of this other little app this fly-by-night app called Auto-Tune. And unfortunately, due to the success of Auto-Tune, I believe they sort of kicked this app to the curb. But back in the day, before OS X, as I discovered, there was this app for Mac called Infinity, and it was a sample editor and that was focused on looping samples. And they had these weird algorithms in there where they would distribute the harmonic content in some sort of crazy way so you can make really seamless loops. Yeah. And I was like, in the back of my head, I was like, oh, I got to use that thing for, and when this came along, I was like, I got to use it. And I went through, I don't want to turn my, actually, I can do it. Wait. If you look down there, you can't see them over there. Okay, there's two really lousy, crappy old Macs down there. Like a pink one that I made my girlfriend send me back from North Carolina, and then another one that my dad had. Anyway, I was trying desperately to get this app to run because it will only run on OS 9. And it's totally archaic, but it loops amazingly well. So long story short, Scott, our awesome IT guy, figured out that there was like an OS 9 emulation environment that you can run on OS X. And we got that running and called Sheep Saber. And it like walks and talks just like an OS 9 Mac on your new Mac. It's crazy. And it took so much effort just in terms of sample formats. Like it had to be SD2 in here, but then you have to do AIF out of Infinity. Like it was super finicky, and I almost gave up a couple of times, but I finally came up with a workflow that was ridiculous that I eventually got pretty good at, but you'd laugh if I showed it to you, so that I could edit my samples this way, and they're all Infinity looped.
Wow.
You're describing Tim Schwartz's career there. Tim Schwartz did a lot of the sound for Emu. That was, I think he was using similar tool sets, and it's a great piece of software.
No, go ahead, Mitchell.
You can actually tell, like in some of the instruments, like when I look at the samples, like TG33 samples that I brought in and stuff, you can see where they used it, because there's one of the algorithms lets you like kind of do like it finds points where the waves repeat and stuff. Like you can actually, if you know it, you can sort of recognize where it's been used. Yeah.
No, we used to use Infinity doing stuff for Hollow Sun many years ago. And Steve Howell, eventually when OS 9 died and OS X became the thing, he kept his OS 9 machine and just bought an OS X machine to, so he could still use Infinity all the time. And he kept saying to me, Rob, you've got to get a Mac. You've got to get an old one. You've got to be able to run this. And I eventually found not a free, but a very low cost looping tool for PC, because I was on PC at the time. And but his stuff was just, and he showed me working, and it was witchcraft.
It is witchcraft.
What it did.
Yeah.
It was absolutely brilliant, and I just can't believe they still don't do it. But I guess people don't loop their samples anymore.
I don't think so. And I'm sure as far as Antares was concerned, they built a giant business on Auto-Tune. But in the case of Harmonia, it was particularly important because some of these samples get tuned up super duper high. And the higher you tune a loop sample, the more it's going to go, make a crazy noise. So having smooth samples was really pretty important to Harmonia sounding good.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it does.
And the other thing is, of course, that if you so under each oscillator, you've got this drop down here where you can then choose from basic analog waveforms, harmonia waves, and then there's a whole bunch of these kind of preset waves that are categorized.
Oh, it's not showing in your screen.
Oh, is it not?
Thing.
Oh,
no.
Oh, it's this whole screen share thing, because it's coming up. Basically, picture this, if you will, in your head, that there is a contextual menu here where my cursor is. But the one thing I was going to draw everyone's attention to is that you can load your own user samples as well and mess around with those. So that was pretty cool.
Do those have to be pre-looped?
Yeah.
Well, they'll play as one-shots if they're not. So you can load samples as one-shots, but you can also loop them in. Most audio editors will include loop metadata in a file, and we have a list in our documentation of editors that we've tested it with. It'll work with most of them, but as long as you have a properly looped file, it'll load in and play. It's such a testament to Mitchell and James, our sound designer. You know, when you're building an instrument like this, that's a new concept that there isn't really anything to compare it to. Oh, there you go. There's the
working.
Got it
Yeah,
working.
great.
Yeah, so you know, we went into this not really knowing exactly what it was going to sound like and what kinds of loops were going to work best for it. And it turns out not all loops work well, because if you have something that's very harmonically rich and you bring in multiple copies of that pitched at different frequencies, it can become a bit of a mess. And so Mitchell and James, you know, they really set out to create a custom sample library for Harmonia. These are all new samples that work well with the concept. And they just went nuts, sampling vintage instruments, synthesizers, everything they could get their hands on, vocal samples, and just finding this huge library of new material that really kind of lends itself to Harmonia's frequency spectrum. Yeah. And it's amazing. I mean, they did such a killer job on it.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. It really is good.
I bet you didn't sample a birthing weasel, did you? It's the one thing, you see, for me, that's the one thing that's missing.
No, we did get an otter.
Oh, well, that's fine. That makes up for it. That makes up for it. Yeah, no, that's good.
You'd be surprised at some of the things we did sample, though, and where they came from. But what we found...
I don't think we would.
Like what Dan was saying, what we found is the things that worked really well were things that changed subtly over time but had definite changes. Things where something would just, tweak out for just an instant. And that way, when you have a bunch of them layered, that whatever irregularity, if you will, would pop up in random places with the different tunings. And we found that things that changed a lot, like or kind of like anything that was really busy and dirty, once you stack those, it was a disaster. Yeah. And we also found that, like Dan was saying, if you had something that sounded like it had a triad in it, well, imagine a triad times 8. It'd be like putting your elbow on the piano. So that didn't work very well either. But one of the very first things I sampled from a record that definitely doesn't have a trademark or a copyright on it, it's a very, very old record, was this flute thing. Was this guy playing solo flute, and it was a kind of quirky, weird thing where he'd hold these notes and you could hear some of the record noises and stuff, and it would sort of wobble a little bit, and it was just gorgeous. It's in there. I can't remember. I got to look it up. I can tell you the name of the sample. And that... Then we knew. Then we were like, okay, this is going to be really cool.
Yeah. No, so it's definitely up there with one of my favorite Cherry Audio original synths, because it does what it does really, really well, and it's super fun. I think that's got to be a key thing. I mean, I had this experience recently with the new Synclavier where it was not fun at all, and I've developed an aversion to it. Whereas this, it was just like straight away, instantly. And it's like the thing we're going to talk about in just a moment as well. You can just go straight in there and start messing around and be rewarded and enjoy. And that's a massive part of a successful instrument, certainly in my book anyway. So that's Harmonia, and it's been out for a little while now, and I'm sure it's doing really well. Before we move on to the next thing, though, and I'll come to Dan first on this one, so get ready, Dan. I just want to say... a few thank yous to people who have been contributing throughout the show. First of all, Jason Crouch for the Moderators Christmas Do Booze Fund. Thank you very much indeed. I don't know when we're going to have a Christmas Do, but we'll sort something out. Maybe we'll have the Christmas Do in Berlin at Super Booth or something like that. They'll just be me and Ben. We'll figure it out. Stephen in Australia, you handsome bastard.
You lovely bastard.
Thank you very much indeed for your 50 Australian bucks, which is the current exchange rate.
£1.13 this week.
£1.13.
Yeah.
That's all we need. That's brilliant. Thank you very much indeed for that.
Or 27 cents.
And 20. Steve Sims, a.k.a. Ixorb. Don't blame me for the OCD. The iPhone won't round up. It's okay. $4.99. That's fine. That's okay. I'm cool with that. But Andrew Brooks, you have no shame. £1.23. Thank you very much indeed. Now somebody needs to donate. I don't know, what is it? 37? No, 77. something. Yeah. Anyway, thank you, gentlemen. Kissing the Machine, old school, £5. Thank you very much. I do like your Dazzle Ships icon there. I'm assuming that's OMD Dazzle Ships. It looks a little bit like it.
It does.
House of Music for 13. Oh, of course, because it's Friday the 13th. Yeah, I wondered. That was. Yeah, there you go. So thank you very much indeed for that. Much appreciated. We do have a few questions. Let me just see if there are Harmonia related. Okay, yeah. James Dyson says, whoever had the idea of being able to import samples deserves a massive pay rise. Was that James who had the... No, it wasn't, was it?
Can I field this one?
Go for it.
Okay, it's definitely not me. I think it was Dan and James, and I didn't want to do it. I was against it.
So Dan, dock his pay.
Yeah. I was against it because I just going through my sample looping thing that I went through, and using other things that didn't loop as good. I was a little worried that people wouldn't be able to loop things effectively. Also, the implementation is pretty, it's not like super fancy. There's no sample zones. There's no like pre-tuning and stuff. So you sort of have to you're kind of on your own. I mean, it definitely works fine, but it's not like a super fancy implementation. We didn't have room for it. So for all those reasons, that's kind of like, I don't know if people are going to get upset. But as it turns out, I was completely wrong because people love this feature.
Yeah.
Before we had a sample, before we actually had developed the sample library, we were importing any sample we could find on our hard drives, and we were making all kinds of crazy sounds with it. And ultimately, it just came down to, if it's fun for us, it's probably fun for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Ronald Wild, for your $5.99 donation. Great show. Thank you. Cool guest. Couldn't agree more. Thank you for that. Prometheus UK wants to know, I think we've had this question before, what's the big synth over Dan's left shoulder? That thing, yeah.
That's a Prophet 10. That's an original Prophet 10, the dual manual Prophet 5.
Wow.
From the old days.
You don't need heating in winter with one of those.
Oh, gosh, no.
Yeah, very warm. There you go. And yeah, Prophet 10. And of course, over Mitchell's left shoulder is the synth he keeps promising he's going to send me, but he never does. The Emulator 2.
Yeah, you can have it.
Oh, go on. Thank you. I'll take it. So thank you for that. We have got some more questions, I know. So the guys and girls who are asking those, I'm going to save those for an appropriate time within the conversation. But I just want to say to Synchrotron, who says it was lovely to meet you, or nice to meet you on Saturday. It was a pleasure also. And thank you for coming along, and thanks for saying hi. And I hope you enjoyed your day at Synthfest. Right, let's see. So next up, because we're going to move along because we've got lots to cram in, is just the small matter of this beast, which is...
Hardly worth mentioning, really.
It's hard. Well, yeah. This lovely, lovely thing, this amazing thing, which is the PS 3300. Look at it. It's amazing. So, okay, I'm going to ask the question. Dan, you're up. Why?
Why?
Yeah, we don't know either.
I mean, of all the PSs, there are 3, 31, 32, and 33. You chose the biggest, the most complicated, and probably the rarest one. Oh, yeah. So, what made you choose this, and how did you go about getting one of these into this?
So I love this era of synthesizers. It was when, every company knew that the future was polyphonic synthesis, but no one had quite figured out how to build a polyphonic synthesizer. And so you wound up with things like the Polymoog, which is this kind of string synthesizer with a paraphonic filter. You wind up with things like the CS80, which is an almost proper polyphonic synthesizer, but it weighs 400 pounds and it's full of custom logic chips because they didn't figure out how to hook a CPU up to it. And then you end up with the PS series, which is amazing. It is a total brute force solution to the problem of polyphony. How do you build a polyphonic synthesizer? Well, you take a 48-note keyboard, and every single key has its own complete synthesizer circuit. So you're playing 48 synthesizers. And that's the 3100. The 3300, every single key has 3 complete synthesizers hooked up to it. So that's 144 envelope generators, 144 resonant low-pass filters, a pitch generated for every single key times 3. And it's just such a massive, incredible thing that someone actually went and built this thing. There's somewhere between 25 and 50 of them that were ever made. And one of them is a beautiful specimen that is owned by EMIAP, the Electronic Music Education and Preservation Project out near Philadelphia. And they are fans of Cherry Audio, I'm happy to say, and they invited us to come out. Mitchell and I flew out back in March of this year. We flew out and locked ourselves in a room for several days with their PS3300 and a bunch of analysis and recording equipment. And we, Mitchell and I, studied every aspect of this instrument, every feature, the LFOs, the envelope generators, the oscillators, the filter, all the patch points, everything that this thing could do. And we came back with hours of recordings and data and information, and we spent the last 7 months creating a very, very highly accurate model of this instrument with a few small improvements and a few extra effects, and in our typical style. But it's very, very true to the original's capabilities. And yeah, it's such a joy to play this thing. It is such a massive musical instrument. When you stand in front of it, it just fills your field of vision. And we set out to kind of replicate that experience by fitting it all on the screen with that cool 3D keyboard that's coming out right at you, just like on the original. And I mean, what else can we say? It's a dream musical instrument, and we got a chance not only to play with it, but to share it with everybody.
Yeah, it is amazing. I mean, the first thing that does strike you is when you look at the thing. It's just gorgeous to look at. You've replicated that look and that feel so very well, which is one of your trademarks these days. But yeah, I mean, just sort of, I'm just going to put up the EMIAP version there. That's the one, I guess, that you were messing around with. I must say, EMIAP, let's give a big up to those guys. Obviously, in North America, in Philadelphia, they are well worth a visit. I know some of our number have been. I think Andrew Ward, who frequents around here occasionally, he's been out there, and I know that Michael Whalen did a whole big show out there using a lot of their gear. It's a fantastic organisation. And, of course, we mustn't forget that you guys are donating 10% of all the profits from the month of October that you make on this machine to EMIAP. Is that right?
That is correct. We are donating 10% of the profits from people that buy it at our website. So I would encourage everyone to, if you're going to buy it from our website, because that sends money directly to EMIAP. And they use, EMIAP's a nonprofit. They use that money to maintain this unbelievable collection of instruments. And I'll tell you what, Mitchell and I, we have both been around synthesizers for many decades. I have, my own impressive collection behind me, but neither of us had ever seen anything like EMIAP. Yeah. We got kind of rock star access to the place. We got to see the depth and scope of their collection, and it is unbelievably massive. The amount of history that they have amassed in one building, and the effort that goes into maintaining this equipment, and letting musicians and enthusiasts come and not only see this stuff but play it. It's an unbelievable effort, and so we're very happy to, in our small way, be able to give something back.
Well, Vince Jr. is in the chat. He says hi.
Hi, Vince Jr. Vince Jr. is the reason why the PS3300 happened. I met him at the Synthplex show in Los Angeles back in 2019. and he's the one who invited us to come down to EMEAP and spend time with their 3300. He's been unbelievably supportive, and he's a great guy and a really great friend.
Yeah, Vince and his father have just done some amazing work, and if you can ever get down to Philadelphia or across to Philadelphia, wherever you're from, if you're going past Philadelphia and you have an interest in electronic music, go.
It's mind blowing, and both Vince Senior and Junior are both extremely knowledgeable about all aspects, not just synths, but organs and electric pianos and any electro instruments. Just incredible amount of knowledge and a collection that we could do a whole show about. I mean, you could talk about it. I mean, it's whatever you think you've seen. Like, it's just mind blowing. It's absolutely mind blowing. Yeah.
You would have to drag me out there kicking and screaming.
Yeah.
Because the amazing thing is, you see like one room of stuff, and you're just like, "Wow, this is great!" And in and of itself, it would be mind blowing. Yeah. And then they go, "Okay, now on to the next room."
Yeah,
right. And I remember
now on to the next room.
And then they said, "Oh, let's go upstairs." And
like,
we
what?
said, "What?"
Every time you're just like, "What? There's more?"
It turned out there's 3 floors to this place. It's just incredible. Mitchell and I both saw things that we never knew existed. And again, we've been in the synthesizer universe for decades. So to see so many instruments that we'd never even heard of.
And it's not just the instruments, it's the previous owners of some of those. They've got Emerson's Moog modular.
I played one note on it. I went, and then I went.
Yeah, I mean, it's still got Keith patches in it. That you can't touch it. It's just Keith patches. It's stunning. I mean, it's a fantastic thing.
They appreciate the history of these instruments and the importance of what they have, and for us to be invited in and given this opportunity to share. Because the 3300, if it weren't for EMEAP, I don't know where another one is on the planet.
Well, exactly.
I don't know how we'd ever get our hands on one.
Exactly.
Curious, you should mention that.
Yeah.
Curious. So, I declare an interest. I used to own one. I got given one. It was someone's son. This is a terribly sad story. The son had died unexpectedly, and he'd bought lots of synths, and he had a basement, and it was one of several synths that were in the basement, and the mother just wanted to get rid of them, and someone gave it to me, and I looked at it and went, "What? Wow. This is back in the 80s, or maybe early 90s." And I had it for about 4 or 5 years, and it gradually deteriorated because it had been in a basement, to the point where the back brackets for all the cards were separating.
Oh gosh.
And it just so happened at that time, I just didn't have the money to get it repaired. So I sold it. I sold it for £1,300.
£1,300.
What's that in dollars? Is that like $30,000?
No, £1,300.
No, I'm kidding.
Back then it was probably
about 17 cents. So, but it was working for a while. And what I remembered of it is just how ridiculously complicated you could get if you avoided the sort of standard sound. If you really worked it hard, you ended up with lots of layered sounds where things were coming in and going out and disappearing and peaking, and the resonant filters were just mad. And the fact that you had 2 LFOs essentially on each of the oscillators, and then ways of controlling them and cross-modulating. So when your lovely PS3300 arrived, I was kind of, okay, now let's see, impress me. I've got a whole bank of stuff coming your way. It's actually quite astonishing how I've got it up and running, but I can't for some reason bring it, play through. My loop back isn't working at the moment. I'm not going to bother with that, but I will send you some banks.
Fantastic.
It's an astonishing thing, and it really does sound and work almost exactly without the noise and the scratchy jacks and pots and switches, which you kind of, go on, work, you bugger. Without any of that, it's a stunning. You've done a really, really, really good job, and I'm loving it. I'm getting lost in it almost every night.
Thank
You're
you,
as happy
Andrew.
as a pig in
Thank
the
you.
proverbial, aren't you?
The synthesizer itself is really interesting. The individual, there are 3 synth panels. The individual panels are single oscillator through a low pass filter with 1 envelope, which individually is a nice sort of single oscillator synthesizer. But it's somewhat limited. Now you have 2 LFOs, and then they add in this triple resonator, which just takes it to a whole nother place. But then when you have 3 of those, the sonic capabilities are kind of mind-blowing, because you can blend them together for a huge sound, or you can have one of them doing a sort of filter sweep while the other ones are playing flute sounds or pad sounds. And then all told, you have 6 LFOs that you can run through the sample and hold. In our version, you can sync them to tempo. And it just, once you get out the patch cords and start patching things, it just goes crazy. I mean, it goes from being this relatively simple instrument to going out to outer space, which I absolutely love. And then on top of that, the effects that we added on really take it to a beautiful new place. One of the interesting things, the 3300 and that PS series was kind of the flagship series that led to the MS-20 and the MS series, which of course was monophonic. The MS-20 and the PS3300 use the same Korg filter chip. It's the same filter, but on the PS series, it's very pretty. And on the MS series, it's very overdriven and distorted, which gives you that famous MS-20 sound. And it was Mitchell who ultimately said, why don't we just put on a switch and give you access to both the pretty
And that's
PS
great.
filter.
Being able to mix and match those is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, and again, it's just one of those things. You flip that MS-20 switch, filter switch, and the huge grinding MS-20 tones come out, and it just takes this synthesizer.
We should tell them about the other thing about that too, Dan.
Go for it.
So the other thing that we were a little surprised at is the 3300 wasn't super bassy like you'd expect. I think in your brain,
it wasn't bassy.
Yeah,
you expected it to be
kind of like the same way as a CS80. Somehow your brain expects if the synth is big, it must have more low end because they can fit more in somehow.
Yeah.
And as it turns out, the PS synths are not super duper bassy. I think that's just kind of a Korg thing from then for some reason. Everything down to my Korg Delta is like that too. So we anticipated that some folks might be like, hey, it's not as fat as I was expecting. So when you hit the PS MS selector switch, when you put it in MS mode, we also disabled some of the high pass filtering that's kind of baked into it. So now when you put it in MS mode, not only does it sound raunchier and more distorted, you also get all that low end back, so it can sound really fat.
But what's really interesting about that high pass filter thing is that the 3300, if you bring it up in a track in a mix, it sits.
Yeah,
because you're not struggling with anything. It's not trying to, it's not competing with the bass of, a bass guitar or a kick drum or whatever. It just sits. So it's odd. You kind of have to get used to that. Or you dial in the MS-20 filter, of course. And the other thing is, I was showing it to someone a couple of days ago, and they said, well, that's a bit pants, isn't it? It's only got 1 envelope per oscillator, and it's for the filter and for the amp. And I just said, yeah, but there's another.
Yeah, I had the exact same
generator.
Experience. When we first got it up and running, I had the exact same experience where it'd be like, oh, well, I need another this or another that. And I was like, wait a minute, dum-dum. I can just patch cable it over from the other module next to it. You could freely mix and match between them. So it really, gives you a lot more flexibility.
Yeah, and you've got the, the general envelope generator as well, which is kind of cool. So it is endlessly complex and wonderful and just mad. I love it. I really do. I'm so glad it's back in my life.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
What
That's
was
really
the toughest
cool.
thing? What was the toughest thing to capture? Because I imagine with something like this, it's a very complex machine. What was the hardest thing to kind of get right with this?
I know my answer, but you answer, Dan.
Can I take a guess?
There were a lot of challenges. I mean, from the unusual shape of the envelopes that this instrument has, to and it's interesting. So there's a lot of quirks on this instrument. The synth panel envelopes have a very different shape from the general envelope generator, for example. And we go to great lengths to get all of those details right. You might not necessarily notice it just playing it, but it's very, very accurate to the hardware. Figuring out how to tone down the MS-20 filter. Originally we went in thinking, oh, this will be just like the MS-20, and we modeled the MS-20's filter when we did the PS-20, but they are night and day from each other. So getting that detail right was a big deal. The resonators, that was a very difficult thing to analyze because you can't turn them off. They're either kind of off or on. And so figuring out how the individual resonators sweep, how all the knobs sweep. There's a couple things, like on the original, the filter has this knob called expand, which is the envelope. It's just basically envelope amount, but they call it expand. But when you turn that knob, it also changes the filter cutoff range. It does some really weird things. And we just kind of replaced that with a standard filter cutoff and envelope amount, which is just so much easier to wrap your head around. And then on the original, for whatever bizarre reason, the original envelope generator release, it's not a knob. It's just 3 preset times that you can switch between, which is instantaneous off, almost right away, and then 8 seconds of release. And
Dan, are you sure? I think the top setting was like based upon your decay setting knob in some way that we couldn't figure out. That never made sense. It never did what you wanted it to do.
And so, again, because we get to take a fresh look at this, we just replaced all that. We actually modeled all that 100% accurately. And then we said, you know what, this is kind of silly. And we just put in a release knob. So, as always, one of the hardest things to do is decide where to stop. And in this case, the panel is so big and so full of stuff that it made it a little easier because there was only so much room to really add things.
I was wondering, I had to, one of the things I remember from it was thinking I would really like, when I had mine, I was thinking at some point of putting in some additional patch points to affect things like just the resonance, or the peak, as they call it, or things like that. Just put in some additional patch points. But you know what? You really don't need it. And the one thing I do notice, I think, is lovely, is that you can patch away to your heart's content on this, and you never get that dreaded instability in the 5-volt rail that suddenly causes everything to go.
We can build that in. Yeah. One of the hardest things, for me, the hardest thing was I did the layout art for it and just fitting everything in, because we have a limited width that we can do, and because otherwise it won't fit on people's displays, and just getting everything in there and not looking like a mess. It's easy to sort of take that for granted when you're just using something and it's just there. But when you actually have to design that thing and lay it all out and make everything sit in a way that's not ugly and out of whack. And also, if you look at any of the old Korgs like that, this or the MS-20 or any of them, the fonts are tiny on those things, which you can sort of get away with in real life because the whole thing's bigger and it's just easier to see. But with something like this, it's cram everything in and then make the fonts as big as I can get away with. So it's, we've got that focus mode, which helps a great deal, but that was extremely difficult, getting everything in there and looking nice.
I just run this on a 4K screen. Just stretch it out down to the bottom.
I do too, but
on a 4K screen, it's glorious.
Yeah, I have a 34-inch display. In fact, Dan kind of busts me on it sometimes because I'll do something and I'm like, yeah, it looks great on my display, and my display is gigantic. And then I got to remember that, like, oh yeah, somebody's running this on an 11-inch laptop. Yeah. So that was tricky too. That was really tricky. And every time we came up with something new to add to it, it was like, oh, where are we going to put it? So yeah, that kept us under control a lot.
Cool. And the effects, I got to say, the effects work.
Yeah.
They're really good. They're really sympathetic, simpatico. Yeah, they're really, really good. They work really well. I wanted to make change. Yeah, I wanted to get in touch and say change bits about the chorus and add a different reverby thing. But the more I used it, the more I realised it actually just works. And guess what? I've got lots of plugins. If I don't like those, I can use something else. And they work. They work.
We got kind of lucky there because because it's just got the chorus echo and reverb, and normally we would put a phaser in, and I didn't have room for any more effects, obviously.
Phaser?
But fortunately,
you've got
the world's greatest phasers are built into each panel, so I was like, wow, I got lucky there.
And the other thing which is fantastic about it is the tuning, the temperament scales you've got.
Yep.
That's really cool. That's really, really cool.
There are presets. Next to the temperament controls, there's a little arrow, and if you click on it, you'll see the presets for the temperament. And those are actually straight out of the original PS 3300 documentation.
No way.
They have a list of suggested temperaments you can use, and we went ahead and recreated them and put them in as presets.
And I found I was doing, when I was making patches, like for the teaser and stuff, I was doing these brass patches, and I found that I was like just tweaking each one of them a tiny bit just to make it a little bit more earthy sounding. So that was where the idea came from. I said to Dan, hey, can we do something like in Melodyne where you can just, have a little menu and have it knock it out just a tiny bit, and that's where that came from.
The random settings, the random settings are very nice for throwing it just a little bit out of tune, which again, the hardware, the way the hardware works is you have 12 top octave dividers, and then it divides down to create all the pitches for all 48 keys.
Yeah.
And so really those temperament knobs, the truth is they're really sort of tuning knobs for the top octave generators, and they moved them to the front panel and called them temperament and called it a feature. But it is very clever because you really do have a kind of an unprecedented level of control over the pitch of individual notes on the keyboard. It's fun.
Yeah.
I think I think it's one of the best. I think it's one of the best soft synths, poly soft synths that I've ever used. And I adore it. I adore it. Well done. Really
Thank you, Andrew. Look, from a design point of view, obviously you could take the 3 synth panels and just put them in a tabbed interface where you can tab between the 3. There are ways to make this smaller, but when you are in front of the hardware, again, Mitchell and I spent days in front of the hardware, and the hardware is just, it's so big.
It's really big.
We really wanted to replicate the experience that we had of, you see everything this machine is capable of spread out in front of you with this keyboard pointing at you. And, and that was the challenge. And we handed that off to Mal and our artist, and he just created this absolutely beautiful 3D keyboard and wood enclosure for the instrument that just makes it feel when I use it, it feels like we're back at EMEAP in front of that machine. It really
the keyboard connector.
Yeah, Mal did an amazing job on that. He really did.
The color of the actual main block at each end, they always look dirty and horrible and grotty. And the temptation, I would imagine, would be to clean it up, but it looks exactly like the real thing.
I think he actually found like an actual spec sheet, like you look up those data sheets where it gives all the measurements and everything, and I think he actually went and found that somehow with that connector, and that's how he got everything so perfect. I'll take credit for all the gobbledygook next to that, like all the weird characters and stuff that are supposed to explain what it does, what each pin is. I actually very carefully copied all those, but yeah, all that 3D stuff with the cable and everything in the keyboard, that's all Mal's handiwork. Amazing.
Isn't there a serial number if you zoom in on the arts? I think there's
something
model number or something that's totally accurate to the original connector.
Yeah, it says Honda on it. I think the legend is it's like Honda, like the same Honda that I guess at the time made these crazy giant connectors, because that connector, for those who don't know, isn't like a regular CV connector. It's a connection for every single key of the keyboard. So it's got something like 48 or more connections in there. And I guess, if that cable or connector ever breaks, you are in proverbial dire straits. So
I see it. It's on the right hand side of the plug as it goes into the keyboard. I can just see it there. Yeah. Great. Big shout out to Mal Meehan, who has been doing your graphics now for the last few synths, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
What a guy.
And wait till you see the next one.
I love it when he says that.
It just keeps getting better.
Oh, wow. Oh, excited. Okay, well, there you go. That's PS 3300, which is fantastic. It's available now. It's currently on sale, I believe, at $49 US. Normally 69 is the full price. Is that correct? Yep.
Yeah.
We did actually have a question from Half God, Half Beast, saying, "How long is the offer running for? Can I still get it next Friday at that price?" I think he can, can't he?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We wait a long time before making any adjustments to our intro. They're not really intro prices; they're the price for now. But I highly recommend, if you're interested in it and you're going to, think about buying it, buy it this month.
Yeah.
Because 10% of that purchase will go to EMEAP, and that really helps them maintain this unbelievable collection that they have.
So I want to hear this, because Mike Martin has posted he loves this instrument and he's releasing a track later today that was created with 17 instances of the 3300.
Oh wow,
so that's going to be rather cool.
Awesome.
So make sure you post that up on the. If you're not already a member of the Facebook group, the ProSynth Network Facebook group, come over, just answer the 3 questions when you sign up if you haven't already signed up, and then post that link, because we would love to hear that.
There is one downside there. There's one complaint, and it really, can I get some sleep back at some point? I mean, really, I've been staying up way later than I ought to. Just go, I'll just do one more little. No, I'll just. And I love the per preset MIDI learn, so I can just. Just get it.
There is so much work that goes into these instruments. It is, it's so gratifying to hear that, because, we have literally been, from the moment we got back from EMEAP in March of this year, we started the modeling work, the design work, the layout, the art, everything that goes into it. It's such an effort. It's just, thank you for that. We appreciate that.
So there's one other question stemming from that, which is, so EMEA are getting a percentage of this for this month, which is great. Do you think there will be any more donations heading their way from additional models that might at some point, who knows, be coming out now that you've visited?
They have extended the offer to us to come back and do it again. And while we were there, we saw many things that we tried very hard not to drool on. So yeah, we'd love to do this again with EMEAP. Absolutely.
In the room, the 3300 that we were working with was actually in one of the small, like their studio room, which is pretty small. But directly opposite of that is a giant 2500 ARP 2500 system. Just so I would just turn around every time, like, oh my god, I'd never been in the same room with one of those things. So it was pretty. Yeah, there's so much cool stuff. So I mean, certainly Vince Jr. was like, check this out, check this out, check this out. And most of it was stuff like some of it we had seen or maybe heard of. There were things that he was bringing us that literally Dan and I had never even heard of, weirdo European things and stuff. So the well is quite endless. I mean, they have an aisle there of it's sort of the monosynth aisle with all these shelves, and there's all these European, maybe you guys, being European and such, would be more familiar with, but over here in America where we got Fords and Moogs, there was stuff that Dan and I were like, I've never even heard of this. I've never seen one of these, never heard of it. Some weirdo, monosynths, just, and lots of them, not like, hey, here's 2. And Dan and I know everything about synths, or we think we do. But I'm telling you, there was stuff that were just like, never even heard of this.
There are so many PPGs. I mean, I didn't know that PPG made so many instruments. I had no idea.
I kind of knew.
Unbelievable.
Crazy stuff. I want to get out there one day. So let's see, we've got a couple of questions. So there was one question here from Jason. We've answered that because he wanted to know where you got access to. Well, we now know it's the one at EMEAP. So that one's been answered. he also asked another question. How did you come to think that every patch point should have an inbuilt mult?
Oh, that's a great question.
Easy, yeah.
So, you know, our Cherry Audio's very first product was Voltage Modular. We've been working with virtual cables and jacks since the beginning of the company, which goes back now 5 years. So, yeah, we've really kind of figured out a really good system for doing virtual patching, and that includes having the built-in mults. You can actually plug a virtually infinite number of cables into any given jack. And so we've taken that technology and we've moved it into our PS20, which is patchable, the PS3300, and yeah, we've just really refined that down. So that's where that comes from. That's all derived from all the lessons that we learned with Voltage Modular.
And that made me very, very happy seeing that.
Also, as guy who writes the documentation, it pays to read the part on how the cabling works, because you can do some pretty nifty stuff. Like if you hold on the shift key, if you've got a bunch of cables plugged into one thing, you can hold down the shift key and move all of them en masse. Or you can hold down, I can't remember the other modifier, and you can route to a bunch of things at once from one source by just single clicking and stuff. There's a lot of cool tricks that were already built, kind of baked into our Voltage modular implementation.
Nice. Right, couple of others before we move on to the news topics for the week. Let me just do that. So first of all, thank you, Mike Martin. Love the show. Thanks for having the Cherry team here again. They're always here. We can't get rid of them, and we love it. But we love it. We love having these guys on. So thank you for your donation, Mike. And there was a question here from DT Scape that says, "I love your synths, but is there any chance you will improve the CPU usage, I'm assuming, on them, as my late 2013 quad-core i7 can't cope with even simple patches on a lot of new synths?" So you do have a setting where you can like really go super high quality on a lot of your stuff.
Yeah, you can turn on oversampling, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, that's, our instruments are very CPU efficient, but we have been... we are not scared to push the envelope of what these instruments do. So if you think about it, the PS3300 is 3 complete synthesizers playing simultaneously with 9 resonators and a complete stereo effects chain. The instruments we've been building, we've been adding multiple layers to, like on the Mercury 6 and the GX80. And we're not building these instruments to run perfectly on 10-year-old computers, because we want to push the envelope of what a synthesizer can be.
And just to sort of deal with that really quickly, I also, as I've mentioned before, I'm an admin for a video channel, not ProSynth Network, the Adobe Premiere Pro editors thing. We have 30,000 members and so, and often we get people, or not that often anymore, we get people saying, "Look, why doesn't it work on my machine? Why does the latest version not work on my machine?" And they're describing a 10-year-old quad-core i7, and you say, you kind of, there comes a point where you're trying to support that, and there comes a point where you have to say, guy, if you've got a 10-year-old quad-core, it's really time to start thinking about upgrading. And I know you don't want to hear that, because you've got all your stuff on it and it's precious to you, and maybe you don't have the budget. But the truth is that at some point, people need to start upgrading to get the most of everything. You can't make everything backward compatible. So I think your stuff is pretty CPU friendly, but you're never gonna be able to do all the stuff you want to on a 10-year-old quad.
Sure, and we have products like our DCO106, which are lighter in capabilities and will run very, very well on older equipment. But we are the just in general. I mean, I'm sure when we get to the news, you're going to talk about the other big soft synth that's out now. And, all these companies are pushing the envelope in terms of sound quality and capabilities, and I love it. It's fantastic. We want to be at the forefront of that. We want to have instruments like Harmonia that are sonically rich and full of, things like mod matrices and all these features that are not necessarily CPU friendly on a 10 or 15-year-old computer. That's just kind of the reality.
line,
of
it is
a line
the
has
reality.
to be drawn somewhere, doesn't it?
Yeah. And by the way, I apologise. I was laughing not at the fact someone's got a 10-year-old computer, but just I think there's a gap between sometimes the expectations of people with their equipment and their expectations that everything should still be able to run. The world doesn't work quite that way.
It's called progress.
So, but they do. These guys do have a lot of really good stuff that is very efficient that will work. So,
Indeed.
But
Indeed.
buy a new Pewty.
Yeah, well, that's on my list for next year, hopefully. Anyway, right, let's talk about a few other bits. Let's give these guys a break. They can now just talk freely about other people's things without being under the spotlight. And of course, as Dan mentioned, there was another huge software synthesis release this week. And well, let's just play you a little bit of the wonderful trailer or introductory video, I think is probably the best way to describe this, that was produced by the wonderful and extremely slim Alex Ball. When I met him at the weekend, he's lost even more weight and he looks ridiculously hot. But anyway, here we go.
In 1979, Oberheim Electronics unveiled the OBX polyphonic synthesizer that not only kick-started their new era of legendary instruments, but also saw the Oberheim name adopted by some of the biggest names in the business. Queen, Rush, Paul McCartney, Prince, Depeche Mode, Simple Minds, Herbie Hancock, Chick Corea, Tangerine Dream, Jean-Michel Jarre, Suzanne Ciani, Japan, Eurythmics, and many, many more. Unlike their previous polyphonic synthesizers, the 2, 4, and 8 voice, the OBX had global controls for the parameters of all of its voices, as well as patch memory. First pioneered with the sequential circuits Prophet 5, this new breed of synthesizer was game-changing, and combined with sounds that were both...
Cut it there because it does go on for about 5.5 minutes. It's a really cool video because Alex Ball did it. But it's, OBX from GeForce Software is available now, and it is the next in their continually expanding line of Tom Oberheim endorsed plugins. He likes it so much he put his name on the box. It's available now. It's only $59.99 as an introductory price and goes up to $99.99 afterwards. And it's got, it's I guess, you guys, Cherry Audio and GeForce seem to share the same kind of ethics and mentality when it comes to recreating classic synthesizers, in as much as you are as faithful as you can be with the stuff, but you add in all of the cool things that will just make the experience just 21st century, and it will work in everybody's studios, software environments, whatever. So with the OBX, you've got a few additional features, such as you can program after-touch destination and velocity destination as modulation points. You've got their extended LFO and extended ADSR envelopes. You've got the macros, which are really, really useful. This does 16 voices, where the original was only available in 4, 6, and 8 versions. But other than that, it's pretty much as you would expect an OBX. I've only ever played one a couple of times, and I think one of them was the GeForce one when I was over there some years ago. And it just captures that Oberheim sound, which is kind of difficult. It's always difficult to describe sounds with words. And when I was doing the review of this, the only words that I could come up with is it has this kind of roundness to the tone, but also this clarity as well. So it can do... I don't want to use the word fat, because everybody uses the word fat when it comes to synthesizers, but it does this full, nice, big, rounded sound, but also it can cut through a mix with some really, sort of top-end frequencies. It's just a stunning sound. It's a classic sound. And it's been recreated brilliantly with this, and I've been playing with both this and the PS3300 side by side now for a few weeks, and both of them just give me the same levels of joy. And to have an OBX, a real proper OBX now in my sonic arsenal, as they say, is just fantastic. Andrew, did you get a chance to play around with this? Because there is a 30-day demo version if anybody does want to try this.
Yes, I did. I'm conflicted by this. Do you remember a while back there was the Oberheim desktop, and Ty was
The OBX8.
Ty was talking about it on the show, and his thoughts on it, which kind of echoed mine. I used to use Oberheims a lot. I used to hire them in and use them on a lot of stuff when I was, in studios and doing whatever, because I loved the sound. But it was about the experience of the whole OBX. It was the controllers, the left hand, right hand. There was a way of working with it. And when the desktop thing came out, both he and I came to the same conclusion, which was it sounds amazing, but it's not the experience for him and for me. It's not as desirable as the keyboard version because you're missing on the controllers and the way you interact with stuff. Okay, that's this is a really good recreation. I love it, and for anyone that wants to get that sound and do that thing, this is definitely going to hit the spot. It's a great sounding thing. It does have all that, as you said, clarity, high end, snappy as hell. It's got really rich bottom end. But for me, the whole thing with the OBX is the entire package. So I'm not going to, it is odd because I should love this and I love the sound of it. And by the way, I love their Mellotron, the Mellotron, Mark IV. I think it's an amazing thing, and I do use that a lot now. This just doesn't quite tickle my fancy for some reason, and it's I know there's going to be lots of people out there for whom this will be a must-have. For me, not having that everything in front of me and being able to grab it in the way that you do with an OB, it doesn't feel quite the same. But it does some things that the original OB didn't do, and some of that stuff is amazing. Some of the modulation,
because it has that user interface. I'm talking about the original that is very simple and straightforward, and they've not deviated from that. They've basically what you see on the top row here is the stuff that they've added. So that's your extra LFO and ADSR, and then there's much like Cherry Audio, you've got 3 really decent effects that are not overly flamboyant and do stuff you just don't really want, and equally they're not incredibly basic. They hit this kind of sweet spot in the middle. They're really, really nice, but they don't kill
and they sound
the
amazing.
Vibe.
Again, they sound amazing.
Brilliant. Yeah. So you've got this chorus delay and reverb, much the same, but everything else is pretty much Oberheim. So if you're familiar with that interface, you should know your way around this really, really easily. The other great thing that they, of course, that they're bringing in is the wonderful patch browser that they've got on their synthesizers now, and they're bringing that in on everything that's new and then updating the old ones. So that's a really great way of finding stuff and messing around with some basic sounds whilst you're in that browser, so you're not necessarily having to jump backwards and forwards. They've got favoriting systems and all of that kind of stuff as well.
And that's a really nice. That interface is really nice.
Yeah. They've done some great work on that, and the sound is just amazing. It's he says, are you hearing that? I'm not hearing that.
No,
that's I think I know what I might have done. No, that's weird. That's very strange. Okay, well, we won't hear it then, but you can go and get a 30-day demonstration version from the GeForce website. So it's out now. If you want to buy it, it's $59.99. There are also discounts and deals if you've bought previous Oberheim software from GeForce. So if you've got SEM or you've got OBE, then you'll get I think if you've got both of those, the price of this drops down to like $39.99. They also do an Oberheim package where they put all of the Oberheim stuff in, and you can buy that at a discounted rate. So now's the time to get into this. But
and definitely download the trial version. Download it, the demo version. Download it and find out for yourself. Not for me, but I know lots and lots of people will love this. Gentlemen, what are your thoughts on this as competitors?
I make no bones about this. I love Oberheim Polysynth. I have them all behind me. I have an OBX. My OBX works about 20% of the time. When you turn it on, sometimes it turns on, most of the time it doesn't. I have spent thousands of dollars having techs try to make it better. with limited success. The OBX is a gorgeous sounding synthesizer.
Yeah.
And the later OBXA and OB8 are also fantastic synthesizers, but they don't sound like the OBX.
And that's all to do with the filters, isn't it?
Yeah, it's all about the filter. The OBX is the 2-pole Oberheim filter straight out of the SEM, and it's a gorgeous musical instrument. And I'm really glad that sound has been recreated in software, because it is unique and absolutely gorgeous.
We have sound.
There's some good.
I've managed to fix. Yeah.
There we go.
Hey Dan, if you talk over this, it could be like a promotion for the competition.
Everybody go to GeForce.com and
after you buy PS 3300.
No, it is. I mean, it's great, and I don't even know if it's a synthesizer that we would have tackled, because mine barely works. It would be so much work.
I got my SEM.
Yeah, that's true.
No, it's. I mean,
and I listened to sound demos of this, and boy, it does have that Oberheim characteristic. That thing about Oberheims that makes them sound so good.
I mean, there's so many plugins out, synthesizer plugins that you could spend, a couple of £100 on. For half of that, you can, today you can go out and buy a PS3300 and an Oberheim OBX for around $100 or £100. Yeah, there, give or take. What a world! What a time to be alive!
Yeah. And yet they still complain.
I know, right?
And that was the cost to rent them a day, once upon a time.
Right,
Each of them.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So,
yeah, congratulations to everyone at GeForce Software for pulling that one off. And I guess we just sit and wait. Are they going to carry on with the Oberheim line? I hope they do. Matrix, I think, would be a lovely one. Matrix 12 would be a fantastic one. Do they do the other OB? The OB8 and the OBX? Sorry, the OBA. I always get them so mixed up. But yeah, do they do the other two, or is this the best one? So yeah, it'd be interesting to see. But yeah, another great software synthesizer for us all to use. Let me see what's next. Okay, so we cannot avoid this one, because I guess this has got to be, and I'm sure some people will disagree, but surely this has got to be the biggest synthesizer hardware news of the year so far, of course, because we still have a couple of months to go. But I think we knew it was coming. It was one of the worst kept secrets. But Yamaha have graced us with the Montage M. impressive video. Even if you don't like the instrument, that's a really impressive feature breakdown there. I mean, Montage, was it 2016 the first one came out? It kind of raised the bar for that workstation type. I come from New York, workstation.
Coffee.
Yeah, it raised the bar, and then since then, Roland and Korg have taken it on and on and on. So when they announced the death of the original Montage a few months ago, and that there would be a new kid on the block, they really did have to up their game. And I think, give or take one or two small things, I think they've pretty much nailed it. In my personal opinion, we said, or I said, when we were speculating on what the new Montage should have, we knew it was going to get the ANX analog engine. So I was saying it's got to give you the closest possible thing to a CS80 experience in the 21st century, because everyone's so enamored with the CS80. It's now achieved kind of this mythical status, and it's like a real high water benchmark for analog synthesis. So it's got to nail that. And the first two notes that you hear, well, it's basically the opening notes from Chariots of Fire, and then it goes off into something else. So it's clearly unashamedly bragging that it can do the CS80 sound. And of course, this has got polyphonic aftertouch. Only, however, in the top of the range M8X model. Now, I read today that that's electromagnetic. The wizardry under that is electromagnetic. So I was speaking to some Yamaha guys at the weekend, and they said you've got to get play on this, because if you're used to a CS80 or a DX1, then you're gonna absolutely, this is just gonna knock those into a cocked hat. And I'm like, really? Because they're proper keys and shit, and it's electromagnetic. So, but that's only on the top of the range version, which I think that was one of the things I think they messed up on. They should have put, because it's like Synth Action Poly Aftertouch is now a thing.
Yeah.
ASM do it in the Hydra Synth. Fatar have the Poly Aftertouch keyboard mechanisms that could have been used. So Yamaha, who make have a history of making great keyboards, could have done that, but they don't. They've chosen not to, and I don't know why. That's an odd decision. But there you go. They didn't put the full-size ribbon in, which could have been nice. They've only got a little one, but it's a clever one. Apparently, it's like 5 stages. There's lots of different things you can do with it. They've even replicated, the switch on the Hammond organ for the rotary speaker that goes off, slow, and fast. You can do that very quickly with just the ribbon. So they're clever little things. So it's got AWM2, which is new and improved. You've got ANX analog engine. You've got FMX again. That's almost barely been touched, the FMX engine. 400 notes of polyphony. 128 for user waveforms. 128 for preset waveforms. 128 for FMX sounds, and 16 for your analog stuff. So, I mean, you're never going to run out of space. Things like parts, where they often talk about this piano, the CFX, used to take up 4 parts. Now it sits in one with 18 different elements in it, so it's super detailed. I mean, it really is a Rolls Royce, and it's the size of one as well. The M8X is huge and heavy, very heavy. I'm very excited about this, and I can't wait to get hold of one, but I need to drum up, like $5,000 from somewhere, and that's just not going to happen anytime soon.
There's a plug-in side to it as well. Right.
Exactly, and that took everyone by surprise. That there is going to be this extended, what do they call it? Extended something or other, plug-in version, which they say is here we go, expanded. Let's bring this onto the screen. Expanded soft synth plugin coming in early 2024. Replicates the Montage M in your digital audio workstation. It's free for all registered Montage M owners. They don't make any mention of selling it separately, but they'd be fools not to.
$1,000.
Yeah. I mean, how much is that going to be? It's a $5,000 machine. How much is the plugin? I don't know. But yeah, they reckon it's the entire thing in software. So
that's cool.
The first, apparently, this is another slightly concerning statement. Let me just see if I can zoom this in. So it says here, the first version of this plugin will have all of the Montage M sound, but limited to basic editing. The full version will be available in summer 2024. So we're almost going to have to wait a year for that. But interesting nonetheless. and opening up the whole montage experience to a wider audience. I've banged on about this far too much already. Gentlemen from Cherry Audio, you are purveyors of fine software synthesizers, but as hardware aficionados, does this appeal? Does this kind of behemoth type thing appeal, or are you looking for something more specialist?
I mean, I love that poly aftertouch is becoming a thing now amongst, major manufacturers. It's about time. The electromechanical side of it that you talk about reminds me of Ensoniq. Their poly aftertouch back in the 90s used inductance on every key. They measured the inductance of it. So when you pushed a key down, it wasn't making contact. It was just measuring how close it got to a contact, which was very interesting. And it's nice to see that kind of technology coming back. As a software developer, I think it's super interesting that they are releasing, it sounds like, the entire instrument as a plugin. And a conversation Mitchell and I sometimes talk about is, why would you pay $5,000 for this hardware that is essentially a computer running a plugin? And I don't know the answer to that. I mean, it looks like a great workstation. I have a Kronos. I appreciate a good workstation. But it does sort of beg the question, in modern times, if all that's inside of it is essentially a plugin, then maybe the plugin is all you need. So is that going to be sold separately? Is that something I can buy and have access to all those sounds? Or is it only for people that own the hardware? I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Well, the thing is this, going back to the conversation Dan and I have all the time about that, there is a perception issue with consumers. I think there's just something about, hey, it's all in one box. I turn on the power switch and it's going to work and it's not going to crash, which I can personally speak from however long Mainstage has been out, 15 years or something. I've done probably thousands of gigs with Mainstage, and I think I've crashed it once, and that was because my computer itself was goofy, and it doesn't crash. Let's put it that way. Mainstage does not crash. I dropped my entire laptop off a stage, and it fell 6 feet, and I walked around, picked it back up, plugged back in the USB cable, and kept playing. It was miraculous. But I do think there's a perception issue there. And I also think there's an intimidation issue of like, I don't want to mess with the computer and a million plugins and all this crap. I just want to turn something on, which is kind of funny because, an instrument like this is extremely complex. And to me, I'd much rather pilot something that deep from a full-blown computer screen and a mouse or touchpad or whatever. But there is a market for it. That's my answer. Is I live in Vegas and I see lots of people playing shows, and I can't tell you how many old dudes I see with 88 key montages that schlep those beasts around to the gig, and I just laugh at those guys. It's like, dude, I paid $29 for Mainstage, and I'm running it on a laptop you can buy for $500 all day long. Yeah. But Yamaha would be smart, I guess, because I would think they have to know all this. Not like they don't know anything I don't know. So I think maybe they see that there's that market and they can cater to that and sell $5,000 keyboards to them. Yeah. But they should also sell plugins to, whippersnappers like me of the same thing and make everybody buy it, right? I mean, it's a killer plugin if that's a plugin.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been banging on about Yamaha doing plugins for as long as I can remember, because they're the only major player that's not doing that. They've done a few iOS apps, but they're really just kind of toys more than anything. So yeah, I mean, I was super happy to see this, but then really curious as to how they're going to implement it. And is this the start of something? Are we going to start seeing Yamaha sort of moving into that space? And I hope that they do. What is interesting, we talk about people using montages and the like on stage, and that it is one of those kind of staples. Although I think Nord have kind of taken a lot of that market away as well in recent years, and so I guess Yamaha are going to be chasing that. But in the studio, this is an incredible machine, because what we mustn't forget is that it also has this brilliant built-in audio interface. 6 in, 32 out USB, high quality USB audio interface. I was speaking with Manny over the weekend, and he said that the is it the pure analog circuit? It's a PAC or something like that. I can't remember what the acronym is now. Has been improved even more, and that was one of the things that was very popular with the original montages. Was the digital audio output on it was stunning, and now it's even better. So that they've really ramped it up and improved all the things that people love, and then added a whole bunch of new things as well. And apparently the UI is easier to get around. The keyboard is stunning from by all accounts. It's a real beast of a machine in all aspects. And of course it's got this second display now, and I was watching a video, I think it was the guys at Andertons were doing, and Mike was showing how if you want to dig into a particular setting, it's all there on that kind of that new strip with the soft keys and faders and rotaries underneath it. But if you want to get even deeper, you just press this button and it flips you to the main screen, and it shows you even more detail, and then you can just bounce things around. The navigation has been seriously improved. So it seems like it's not just a machine for the gigging musician, but it's also, it can be the center of your studio, if you will. Andrew, thoughts?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, we talked about this, and we've been speculating endlessly about this for a few months now. And the wish list and the hit list that was identified was, we really wanted them to do something that had a CS80 something that did what CS80 did and sounded like the CS80. The second thing we asked for was, or the second thing we predicted actually, was that it made no sense for them to build a new range unless they also built essentially a new chipset, which could then be redeployed, downscaling it to give them a whole bunch of different instruments from one chipset. And that's what they've done. And the third thing we said was it needs to be plug-in. They need to come up with some sort of plug-in system like the Zencore or whatever else. And then the last thing was it needed to have an awful lot of controllers, and no one could see how that would work. And I think I made I made a very rash thing. I said if it came out with that, I would imagine we couldn't envisage them. I think Kent was somewhat sceptical that they'd actually come out with a polyphonic aftertouch thing. And I said, if they do, they can charge a premium for it, because that's what they've done always. They bought out, once they bought out the DX7, then the 5 and the 1. The 1 was the premium thing. The CS range, the CS80, is still, it was and is iconic because of the sounds from it when you first turn it on and you just play the presets. They're pants. It's awful. But as soon as you get into all the modulation stuff and the polyphonic aftertouch, it suddenly becomes an instrument. So this dropped. We were all sceptical, and I've got to say, I think they've killed it. I understand why they've done just the MX8, because that's what they've always done. They've had one signature instrument, highest price. This isn't as high priced as the 80 was, or the 1. By a long way, even at the time, as far as I recall. But it does everything that people want of it, with one exception, which is the long ribbon strip. But guess what? You can buy an aftermarket ribbon strip that sends out MIDI CC, stick it on top of it, and that's it. You're done then. And honestly, I wasn't looking to buy anything else. I think on last week's show or the week before, I said once Kent had done his demonstration of the System 55 that I'm going to get one, but I'm going to get that for the business or for the mentoring thing we're going to be doing, because it's a really great way to teach people how synths work. Mind you, I'm looking at the PS and thinking, maybe that does it. So I'd already spent all the money I was going to spend on another piece of hardware. Then this landed. It's $5,000 or thereabouts. I'm going to sell my DX5. I'm going to sell a bunch of other stuff, and I'm going to buy this. It's that simple. I have to have this, and the reason is that everything I want to be able to do as a performer, to be able to craft and shape sounds in real time, is all there. I can perform on this. It's what they've done is what they did with the 80 and with the DX1, which is create an instrument, not a workstation. I don't think of it as a workstation at all. I think of it as an instrument, and it's stunning. It's stunning. I love it. I've got to have it in my life. I'm going to buy one. That's it. It's just a huge, great thumbs up from me.
Yeah, that's it is a beast of a machine. Yamaha have chosen to sell this direct.
Oof.
And this is an interesting development, and I don't know how this is going to play out. They've decided to bypass the regular distribution network, and you basically buy this from Yamaha, then Yamaha will have the distributor send it to you. So they're not cutting them out, they're just going a different route. And I don't rightly know why that is. I don't know whether that's got anything to do with wanting to cream off the top high end, because I think they're doing it with this and the CKs, not CKs, the Clavinovas. Sorry,
Clavinovas.
So I don't know whether there is this thing, but yeah, if you go to a dealer, you're not actually going to be buying it from them. You're going to be buying it from Yamaha, and the dealer will supply it, and then the dealer, I think, gets paid from Yamaha. It's an odd mechanism, and it has upset many retailers, which I can't really expand upon because of various agreements that I've signed. But yeah, it's an odd thing. But yeah, there you go. So if you go to the UK website, and I don't believe this is a global thing, because if you go to the UK website, there are no prices on the page. You go to the USA website, and the prices are there. So it's a very odd thing that they're doing, but it's not the first. Ableton did it. I didn't realise they were doing this with the Push 3. You can't buy the Push 3 at shops. You have to buy it directly from Ableton, which is maybe that's the way it's going. Who knows? But very interesting stuff. And yeah, we're going to need, I think, we can go $2,000 each maybe, and we can have we can share.
No, I want it all to myself.
No,
no one's getting it.
You know, I have to admit, I did go onto the website and I did start looking at. I never look at finance options because I've had trouble with finance many years ago. I hate taking credit, but this thing had me looking, and I'm looking where the bloody hell do I put it? But it is one synth to rule them all, really. And that's the thing with the Montage. It's not a workstation per se. It is a synthesizer. First and foremost.
It's an instrument. It's an instrument.
Yeah, particularly the M8X.
It's an
it is,
instrument.
it's a wonderful thing. So there you go. The king is back, shall we say. Let's see what else we've got. Oh, there was another piece of interesting hardware that came out this week. It's been a very busy week. I think over at Gear News, we had 15 different new products this week alone just to get reviews and stuff up on. And this thing really did interest me. I'm going to play the demo video for you. So that gives me time to then get everything up on screen. Here we go. This is new from went on for as long as it does, so I'm going to cut it short there. This is the new APC 64 from Akai or Akai. If you're on the other side of the Atlantic, they emphasize the K. I don't know why that is. Anyway, Akai APCs, not a new thing, but this is a brilliant controller from them. So you've got the 64 grid that you're finding on a lot of these controllers these days. Touch sensitive, poly aftertouch capable as well. But instead of faders, which the APCs have always seemed to have had, this has now got touch faders which is an interesting concept. Not only that, but it's got its own built-in step sequencer, albeit 32 steps per channel or something. So it's a limited built-in sequencer, but of course it's designed to be used with Ableton. But you've also got 8 CV gate outputs, which I believe translates to 4 because they can either be one or the other. So you can have 4 CV gate connections. So you can now hook up other bits of gear whilst this is hooked up to Ableton, and then clock the whole lot in a live set, which is a very cool idea. USB, regular MIDI connections on there as well, and I think retails for around $350 in the UK, which is a superb price when you consider that things like the big Launchpad, the Launchpad XL, is a couple of hundred, and Push 3 is what was that, $899 for the standard, the normal version, $1699 for the one with the computer built in. So this sits in a really good place in the market for that degree of control and the external stuff as well. I'm seriously tempted, having only recently got into the whole Ableton thing. This is very tempting. Do any of you guys use Ableton at all? Or?
Yeah, these kinds of things always make me feel old because I play a keyboard and turn knobs, and I don't speak this language.
Me too. I like ELO.
Yeah, but they've got pretty colors on here, just like ELO had on there. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Well, it's very cool. And when you watch someone like in the video, someone that's adept at performing on this kind of machine, it's very impressive. But it does.
I don't know what they're doing, but it's probably cool.
Yeah.
I'm 73 years old.
Yeah, we're all of an age. I guess we're all fairly close. I only got into this, sort of this year, and I got 2 or 3 of these kind of pad controllers, and it's surprising how fun and how quick it is to get used to controlling instruments as well as drums and firing off sequences and loops. I thought I would be, sort of shake my fist at clouds kind of thing, but it's actually very, very intuitive and very, very fun. And fun's, it's got to be fun.
I think what's really cool about this, the touch strips, because you can see what he's doing there. He's got 4 touch strips on each side, but he's controlling 3 at a time. That way of being able, that degree of control over something like this is extraordinary, and it does open up a whole bunch of possibilities. And you're right, Robbie. As soon as you start playing with something like this, you just have to, you just have to teach yourself another way of doing things. And it's certainly something that when you match it with something like Ableton, it will yield an awful lot. There's going to be all sorts of EMOMs using this at $399, and it's got CV outs as well, and it's got a built-in sequencer. It's a great thing, at that price. I hope it's well built enough that the touch strips don't go khaki really fast. I can't imagine it will be. Most of the Akai stuff is really well built, so
it's certainly improved.
And it's got poly aftertouch, velocity sensing, aftertouch. It's a good thing, and I can see lots of people, and for the amount of space it takes up. Also, guys, I was thinking something like this would be really cool to tie up to some of your software, particularly something like Harmonia, where you can assign a whole bunch of stuff. You can be zipping through harmonic series, assigning buttons to do, to call up different things. This would be a match made in heaven for something like Harmonia.
I think the CV gate side is really interesting. The idea of tying, a grid controller and sample-based playback and all that with your Eurorack analog synthesizer setup and MIDIing up to Ableton Live and using plugins like ours. It really is sort of a surprising amount of control for everything in your studio.
Really, it would be nice. I mean, I'd love. Here we go. This is where we start pitching, right? It would be nice to see some knobs as well, because then I could control more directly some of the other things. But guess what? I've got lots of knobs on all sorts of other things. So this is a very particular thing. I have to say, at $395, was it?
Well, I think UK street price is going to be around $325 to $350.
do you know, that's almost a no-brainer just to get it and try it out and
is.
play around with it. It really is.
Yeah.
I was using this little beastie, which is, it's all right. But I was using it to control the PS3300 just before we went on air. And I was using the drum pads to play, with one hand. So I'm playing bass sequences with the drum pads whilst doing pads here. It was kind of an interesting swap around. So I could, I don't see, you get used to that real fast. So
I was very lucky when I got into live. I had a couple of people, very generous people. Kent was one of them, who gave me a couple of pad controllers. Kent gave me an Akai APC Mini, and another gentleman gave me a mini Launchpad Mini. And then I went and bought the Launchpad, not the XL. There's one in the middle. It's full size, but it hasn't got all the whiz-bang stuff on it. But it was all touch sensitive, and it was great for playing. It was really expressive. But the other stuff, I still use them because I'll use them to fire off clips. They've got another function within the thing. So, yeah, I mean, if you wanted knobs and faders, you can still use one of these. Because nowadays, you'll see people with one of these little things, and that's got all the knobs and faders that you need. And then you have a little pad thing next to it to do all the Ableton-y stuff. And you're still not taking up a huge amount of desk space doing it, and it's very light and it's very affordable. I'm seriously tempted with one of these, really am. So yeah, there you go.
We're not seeing a huge amount of reaction in the chat to it, so.
Well,
and I'm surprised because there's a lot of emailers. I would have thought this would have been very much up
My
on the
fault.
street,
I started a discussion of vintage dinosaur bands.
Sabotage.
They're now talking about Jay Giles' band, which, by the way, Comeback by Jay Giles' band, excellent CS80 song, M Flamethrower.
Yeah.
Excellent CS80 tunes.
Very true.
Yeah.
There you go. So Akai's APC 64 is available now, around the 350-ish mark. I think US might be 399, but it's still, it's not a bad thing. What have we got? We've got 5 minutes left. I think we might have to drop a couple of things to next week. We talked about the montage. Just to let everyone know that if you do own a Sonicware sample Trek, it has just been updated to the version 3 firmware, which has added a bunch of stuff, including a performance mode. So you can, it's basically set up for live performance. So it just gives you all the things you would like filter cutoff on the knobs, and you just select the instrument, then you just play it directly, as well as the whole programming stuff. So that's had a sweet little upgrade, which is completely free. You can download that now from Sonicware, and our friend Chris Dodsworth has done a brilliant tutorial video taking you all the way through that. So
Yes,
that
good.
was new. There was also, here's one for the vintage sampler nerds amongst us. I don't know if anybody knows or is aware of this project by Quitec, I guess that's how you pronounce it, who do their version of the Yamaha stereo sampler, but this is the TX16WX software sampler. Comes in 2 versions. One is completely free, and then there's a professional version which you can buy a license for about $99. It's a hugely powerful sampler that kind of takes the TX 16W methodology and then brings it kind of slap bang into the 21st century, but still plays a whole bunch of those original samples as well. It's a great sample editor. That's just been updated to version 3.6, where aside from a whole bunch of bug fixes, it's now got native Apple Silicon support, added clap plugin format. There's a whole bunch of added options, convolution reverbs, batch conversion features, database support for automatic scanning and categorization. SF2 import is improved. EXS export and import have been improved. Loads of stuff. So yeah, if you like a little bit of vintage sampler goodness, all in a piece of software, that's just been updated.
I love the fact that SF2 hasn't yet gone away.
I know, it's still there, isn't it?
It's still there. It's a good thing.
And
Could I ask you to cover one other thing?
Go for it.
Which was, I'd love to know more about Synthfest. How did that go? How did your
so Synthfest. Try not to bore everyone because it's one of those things you had to be there to experience it. But it was another fantastic.
If I may just quickly interrupt. So often on this program and elsewhere, we hear people talk about FM and say doorbell, right? You did a 40th anniversary with Dr. Manny in the auditorium. You did it there, did an hour or whatever it was. There's only 300 people. There's only 300 seats in the room, and you had 326 people in there. That kind of belies the fact that, despite what some people say, FM is still popular. It is still a wonderful thing. And you did that. So tell us about that presentation. How did that go with you and Dr. Manny?
There will be a video of that shortly. It's in edit, not made by me, thankfully. Jamie from Geosynths did all of the video work for all of the seminars. So there was myself and Manny doing FM. There was a theremin thing before us, and then the MIDI Association Awards after us. But yeah, Manny was everywhere he went. He was like a superstar. It was just basking in his glory as he was meted and greeted by the great and the good. But yeah, it was it went very, very well. We had a couple of minor technical issues, one just before we went on and one during, but hopefully I think we covered for those so people didn't notice anything. But we talked about, because obviously it's a DX7 40th anniversary, but everybody knows about the DX7, right? So we thought, tell you what, let's have a look, because we're going to go and look at the modern version of FM, which you find in Montage and Modi X, which is this 8-operator, 8-part stuff. Where did that come from? And that came originally from the TX816. So I got the TX816 and a QX1 and an RX11 drum machine and the DX7. And we ran that whole system playing some demonstration stuff that probably hasn't been heard in public for about 30 odd years, I would imagine. So we talked about that, and then we moved over to Manny, and Manny just wowed everybody with what he does with FM, and it's stunning. So he played some TX816 patches, which were all, so it was using it in common mode, so everything you play is coming out of all of the modules, and it's stunning. Then he moved to the Modi X7, where he played some amazing patches, but then showed this remarkable piano patch. So he's developed a grand piano patch that is completely FM.
Wow.
And what he's done is each element that you can build up in the montage plays a different thing. And he calls it, and he's in the chat, so I need to get this right. And it's harmonic component modeling. Manny, please tell me I've got that right. Harmonic component modeling. So he's building a patch for each kind of harmonic element within the grand piano. So, like the top end, there are no dampers on that. So he's creating that harmonic. At the lower end, there are different harmonics in the middle. And then the attack portions, so there's one patch that literally just goes, it's just clicking, just to give that, and then you put it all together, and it's as convincing as grand piano as you would ever expect from a sample library. It's stunning.
Wow.
And we did that whole thing, and it went really, really well. And we kept getting loads of people kept coming up to us and saying how much they enjoyed it, which was super gratifying. Then we went down to see Yamaha because they were generous to a fault, and they gave us for about 6 months. Well, actually, probably a little less. A Modi X7 for us to use. And I had it here, and we went to take it back to them, and they said as soon as your thing finished, we had this big flood of people come down to our booth, and they all went to the Modi X's and started playing around with them. So I think that was, for me, that was the most rewarding part, that Manny had inspired all of these people to go down and play with FM on these new things. So yeah, that was hugely rewarding. But that was just 1 hour out of an entire day of experience at Synthfest, which is always a great place to go. the best part about it is the people. As with all these events, you meet up with all of the guys, a lot of the guys and the girls that you see over in the chat. So Andy Brooks was there, Jim Glue, Native VS, Dave Walker, Alex Ball, Starsky Carr, all the guys from Analog Solutions. At the end of Synthfest, we all went out for a meal, which Andy Brooks organised. Thank you ever so much for doing that for us. It was kind of a massive PSN gathering. I think we had nearly 30 people in the restaurant around 2 tables because the Analog Solution guys got kind of shoved in the corner, bless them. Which you never put the Analog Solution guys in the corner. Oh, and of course, Maximus was there.
That was their bill.
Is that as cool as it?
It's way cooler. It's just so mind-blowingly good.
Are there any sound demos of it yet? Because there weren't.
We're hoping we may. Yeah, we're hoping we may be doing a special on that in the not too distant future. Well, fingers crossed. More information about that later or another time. But
I will be sure to tune into that.
I can tell you, I've played with an 8 voice. An Oberheim 8 voice, which is clearly the inspiration. Yeah. Tom makes no bones about this, but it goes beyond. Every voice has this wonderful 16-step looper thing in it, and you can do just some crazy ass shit with it. But I got them to put it into like just kind of try and put it into poly mode, so I could just play big, and it had that whole thing that the 8 voice gives you, because everything's just not quite the same. And it's just glorious. I mean, it's so nice. Yeah. It is everything you would expect it to be and more. And if I had 25 grand, I would. I'd be getting a divorce, but then I'd probably be able to afford it. But yeah, it was absolutely fantastic. C15 was another highlight for me. I've never seen or played one in the flesh. That was stunning. Especially because it had a lot of Manny's patches, because he's done a whole bank of stuff for them, and to get to talk to the inventor, who was Stefan Schmidt, the guy behind Native Instruments, who is is one of those. He's kind of like he's one of the big names in in music technology.
He's kind of like He's kind of like a Dave Smith, or
he's up there. He's got to be up there.
Yeah, he's got to be up there. Yeah.
That was brilliant. That was great. And then, of course, just
or a Dan Goldstein,
or a Dan Goldstein, yeah,
but not a Mitchell. Mitchell tried to swap out a weasel, a birthing weasel, with an otter, and thinks that we're going to put up with that.
But it was everything that Synthfest is and more. It was great fun. I can't wait. They're doing it all again next year as normal. It's going to be Saturday, October the 5th. They've already announced the date, which is something they don't often do. It was a full house, brilliant, thoroughly enjoyed it. Can't wait to do it again. So, but look out, Sound on Sound's YouTube channel if you want to see the presentation that Manny and I gave, or any of the other presentations. And there's lots of videos, and some really good videos that people like Robin Vincent, Get Jervis. Who else did? There's loads of walk around videos. Ben Divkid did one. So if you want to kind of get a flavour of what was going on, watch those videos. There's loads of content sort of flying up this week on YouTube. So yeah, it was brilliant, and can't wait for next year, and of course everything that comes in between. So yeah,
very cool.
There we go. I think
there's more, but we can run that over into next week, can't we? There's a few.
Yeah, I mean, we were going to talk about the Tangerine by 1010 Music, which I think is a super cool little thing, but that can wait till next week.
And the Waldorf Iridium.
And the Iridium Core from Waldorf, which is nice, but for the price, you might as well just spend another, was it 100 or 200 euros and get the full blown thing. It's a very oddly priced thing for what it is, but we'll talk about that next week. We will. During the show, we also learned, or certainly I also learned, that Kent is not feeling very well, which is why he hasn't joined us. So, Kent, if you are watching, feel better soon.
Get well soon.
Feel better, Kent.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah, send all of our positive vibes your way, my friend.
We miss you.
Yeah, absolutely. So hopefully we'll see him back in fine fettle next week. Talking of other shows, Randy's not doing his show tomorrow because it's his wedding anniversary. So, yes, that's, let's see, they're coming to take him away. Can you hear the sirens? So Randy won't be on tomorrow. So, yeah, there's kind of going to be a gap in the weekend, which means I can get on with the stuff that I've got to do here, which is like disassembling everything from last week. Gentlemen from Cherry Audio, thank you ever so much again for coming on. We love having you on. Today has been no exception. 2 instruments today. I always ask you this. You mentioned something that we were going to see coming soon. How soon is it? I'm not going to ask you what it is because you're never going to tell me. I'm not going to ask you when it's going to come, but is it going to come before Christmas? Is Santa bringing us something nice?
Yeah.
Yes. We have actually the Thanksgiving turkey might even.
Oh, that's not far away.
Oh, so I don't have to wait for Santa to fill my sack.
Oh,
your sack is not our concern.
This
is my mic on?
This is the busiest year for you guys, isn't it?
We have, yeah. I don't know. They all seem to blur together, but we have something very cool, a beloved vintage analog, something or other. And I will tell you that unlike most instruments, we've taken this one and we've just gone to the moon with it. We have taken it to all new places, well beyond what the original hardware could do. If there's ever been a classic analog that deserved a lot more knobs and sliders, it's this one. And that's coming. And you know what? We might even have a little Christmas gift coming as well. You never know. It's possible.
And then,
go on.
And then something really unexpected down the road.
Wow. I love it. I love this excitement. I really do.
The Weaseltron.
Yeah, the Weasel.
Mitchell, I told you that Weasel.
I gave it away.
He's gonna fight us.
Yeah, but we're actually I think working on 3 things at once, kind of, sort of, now down the road. That's how it works. So the stuff we talked about today, Dan and I were just talking about, even though it's a couple weeks, those things are a distant memory. We kind of move that quick, so it's weird.
And we love it. We love you for it. Cannot wait to see and hear what those things are. Gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure as always. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having us.
We appreciate your support. And
we appreciate being on the show.
Yeah, excellent stuff. Next week, I almost don't want to say who we've got on next week, because the last time I said that he was coming on, he had to pull out at the last minute, and I was kind of left with a bit of egg on my face. But I spoke to him the other day, and he said, yeah, absolutely, I will be here. David Gamson will be on our show next week, and I'm so excited. David Gamson, if you don't know, was 1/3 of prime Scritti Politti. He's also behind Michelle Indegiacello, and he's working with a brand new artist who we'll learn more about next week, because that's what he really wants to focus on. He's not into his vintage stuff anymore. We're going to be talking all the modern stuff and how David works in the box these days. But David Gamson, who is just one of the best musicians and a huge inspiration for me, will be on the show next week. You do not want to miss that one. And that, ladies and gentlemen, I believe is a show. Thank you ever so much. Andrew, did you have anything else you wanted to add before we go?
No, I thought that was a brilliant thing. Thank you so much for coming, gents. Always a pleasure. Looking forward to your new things. That's good. Yeah. Great to have you back on the show, manning the tiller so manfully and steering us safely home to port again. Robbie, you always do it so well.
I caught up on last week's show, and you did a fantastic job, apart from the fact that Shure, you talked about this, this thing with the preamp in. They, not Shure, but the publishing company of the people or the person that did the music gave us a copyright claim.
What?
So if you go and watch that video again, the music's gone. Because I thought, I'm not arguing with that. Just get the music and get our monetization back.
What?
So it wasn't Shure. But did you know that new Shure mic? Just to get this in here, because we use them. And I don't know about you, Andrew, but certainly myself and Kent use cloud lifters because these are dynamic.
I don't.
You don't.
No, I don't.
Clearly.
No. I use a weasel.
So we all use cloud lifters to give it that 20 dB lift. I didn't realise. Well, I think it was only the other day that they announced that Shure did a deal with Cloud, and that's their technology in the back of that mic.
I think that's what Mike said. Mike said that last week.
Oh,
yeah.
he did he? Yeah. There
Yeah,
you go.
yeah. He mentioned that. So
yeah,
cool.
It's for years everyone that's bought an SM7 has said, "Oh, you got to get a cloud lifter." Sure did the right thing and went and got licensed the technology and put it inside. So there you go. Anyway, small nugget of information. That's all we've got time for this week. Gentlemen, again from Cherry Audio, thank you ever so much. And also a big shout out to Robert. I don't know if Robert is in the chat still, but he's like the middle guy and he does so much great stuff. And he helped me out so much with Harmonia because I was in the middle of France when that dropped and I hadn't got my graphics. And Robert did a sneak in, just knocked up a couple of graphics for me, and he was.
Thank you, Robert.
I haven't dropped him into any shoulder.
Thanks, Robert. Great job.
Robert does an awesome job. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, he does an amazing job. So thank
Cherry
you,
Robert.
so much for that.
Hello, he says. It's a bit late for hello, Robert.
Brilliant. And great to see the guys from EMIAP in the chat as well today. That was fantastic. So there we go. That will be back same time, same place next week. Don't forget, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, ring that bell to get notified because we do some shows. We're starting to do a few more that aren't just on a Friday night. So we do these cold unboxing videos. We've done one with the Behringer System 55. We did the infamous Synclavier one. We'll be doing another one of those soon. So make sure you hit the bell and then you won't miss out on any of our content. And hopefully we'll bring you some fun and joy with that. Until next week, bye-bye, everyone. Take care. Have a fun weekend. Bye.